Welcome to the Custom Smarts podcast, where you'll discover smarter ways to deliver customer experiences. I'm your host, Justin Stafford. Most organisations have a desire, strategy, or program to become more customer-centric. However, many CX leaders are still struggling to shake old product-centric ways of working and are often finding it challenging to unlock enough investment to improve their customer experience to the standard they desire. If your executive team haven't fully embraced your customer-centric approach, it makes it extremely difficult to drive it forward, especially if it's still viewed as an expense. My guest in this episode, Yvette Mihalik, has a truckload of experience navigating complex stakeholder structures and getting buy-in to drive customer-centric transformation for organisations like Transport for New South Wales and Telstra. She is now Director of CX for John Holland, where she oversees customer experience across many of the nation's public transport systems, including Sydney Trains, Melbourne Trains, and a whole bunch more. It's an enormous job. So in this episode, we're going to explore what's holding back your customer-centric strategy, how to unlock larger investment into CX, the most important CX metrics to focus on, and some innovative new CX concepts that they are launching. Welcome, Yvette. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks, Justin. It's really great to be here. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Well, I'd like to start by getting your perspective on why many organisations have a desire or a strategy or program to become more customer-centric, but often are struggling to fully put it into practice. What are some of the things holding organisations back when it comes to really putting it into action?
Probably a couple of real reasons why I think organisations struggle to put their strategy in effectively and efficiently. The first one is around legacy thinking. I think when a lot of organisations are still stuck in that mindset that sales and growth are key drivers that are aligned with themselves and there's no customer experience involved, and that customer service is that dark arts type of thing that's separate, that kind of adds value, but it's not really clear where. And that leads me to my other bit, which is around the fact that a lot of people just don't understand the commercial nature of customer experience, or indeed know how to commercialize it and really bring to the forefront of understanding there's tangible benefits for businesses by focusing on customer experience, by developing and implementing and validating a strategy that's not only short-term, but also medium to long as well.
Yeah, great. And what are some of the steps you would go through or have been through in the past to implement a customer-centric strategy or customer-centric transformation?
Well, a couple of steps that I think of just off the top of my head. And the first one is around data. Now, again, a lot of people think customer experience is the dark arts or it's the light and fluffy stuff. But for me, nothing can be further from the truth. It's important, though, to manage that data analysis and understanding all of those key data elements with not overdoing it and getting analysis paralysis, essentially. So making sure that you've got the data, it's the right data, and you're analysing it properly and well and gaining out of it what you need. The second one is actually understanding the problem you're trying to solve. So rather than just going forward on what the symptom is actually looking at what the cause is and what is the problem that we are trying to solve here, not just going for sales. What's stopping the sales from happening? Another one is actually creating the case for change. So if I think around how businesses, and it goes back to that legacy thinking around sales and growth as well, it's all around if we keep trying to sell to as many people as we can across as many channels as we can, well, we're bound to get some that stick. If we actually look at, if we do change the way we do things, what's that cause and effect? What's the impact? And often we'll find that if we do deliver a better customer experience, depending on the product, the service, etc., we will get better results. So our sales force has to do less work in order to get those sales to stick. All of a sudden, the commercialization becomes a reality because we can see there's a direct correlation between better customer experience or investment in customer experience and tangible outcomes on the P&L. And then we have a look at, I think, cross-functional strategy, because often, and this is where I see a lot of customer experience strategies fail, it's around just looking at it in silo. So, oh, that belongs to those people over there in that department in customer experience, whereas nothing could be further from the truth. Customer experience, the team or whatever it might be called in your organization, might be the owner of the strategy and they might be accountable for the delivery itself, but everybody in the organization is responsible. And true customer centric change and improvement will not happen unless everybody's got skin in the game. And that's everybody. So for me in public transport, that's everything from the people who drive the trains or trams or ferries right through to the people that change the nuts and bolts or they like look after the overhead wiring. If they don't understand what they're doing and what the purpose is for, they don't then have that skin in the game to understand why and the purpose for change. Then we look at collaboration and co-creation. For me, they're almost hand in hand. They are slightly and distinctly different though. So that collaboration is I work with other people to get things done. We have to get things done because there might be a bit of a cross around who's responsible for what. If you think about a racy, who's responsible and who's accountable. But then there's also around co-creation. And we often do this with our clients or our customers. So we actually get together, we have different forms of life and life experiences say that actually come to the forefront and co-create things together. And an example of this, for example, is we bring people in who have lived experience with disability. And so when we're trying to look at how do we give information to people around when their next tram, bus or train is coming, we bring them in and say, what would work for you? And together we create what that looks like based on what it is they need, what it is that we need to deliver, what information we need to deliver. And then all of a sudden you've got an example of a solution that is purpose-built, contextualized and personalized for the very people we're trying to design for. And then we talk about continuous improvement a lot, or I do talk about continuous improvement a lot. And that's around not only just, it's a circular thing, and we talk around Lean, Six Sigma. There's a lot of buzzwords and a lot of different methodology around this, but it's really getting into the heart and the deep of it and identifying what metrics mean success for you. And how do we validate what that success looks like? So it's not necessarily customer satisfaction. It's more to do with what are the lead indicators? What are the beacon metrics that will be the really shining stars around what we can expect that customer satisfaction to be down the road? So again, if I think for me around public transport, I think we know that what's important to customers is that their service, whether it be a tram, bus or ferry, turns up on time. It's also important that they know when it's going to come, so the information. And so all of a sudden, if we use those particular metrics or those operational metrics as lead indicators, we can reasonably expect to model what our customer satisfaction is going to be. And we know then that our customer satisfaction directly impacts how many people use our service or our patronage. And so all of those are absolutely linked, but it's important to get what those particular metrics are right up front. The last one is an acronym because everybody loves an acronym. And my acronym is FUBU, and that's for us, by us. Now, yes, there are a myriad of awesome and amazing consultancies out there that specialize in customer experience. But essentially, unless those consultancies help you out and they do it, they co-create it with you in collaboration, they have all of those elements because only you know your business. Only you know your organization. And so you can have that helping hand from the consultancy, 100%, but you must own it and it must be for us and by us because there's no other way that I can ever see that you'll get the buy-in from your people, top down and bottom up, to continually deliver the customer experience you're trying to deliver. So, yeah.
It's a big challenge, isn't it? You've got essentially that orchestration of all the different, getting everyone on the same page, and the customer is really at the connection point for all the different departments. And like you say, working in silos, you can't build a CX team in a silo and expect to have any success. It's really it is a massive job, as you know, because you're doing it. So yeah, quite a big challenge.
It is indeed.
Now, I'd like to talk about how you unlock larger investment into CX. Customer experience, unfortunately, sometimes is seen by organizations as an expense. How do you get those kinds of executives who might be thinking that way to think differently?
This is the magic sauce sometimes as well. So, um, what I've found and what's worked for me in the past is to actually understand the motivations of each executive. One size does not fit all here. So, for example, CFOs, they always want to see the ROI. Show me the money, right? So it's pretty simple, and I'll use them as an example. Um, I've always decided to be prepared, like almost like a scout, and that is primarily to get an irrefutable case study together from the industry that demonstrates the applicability of what you're trying to deliver or what you're proposing to invest in. Make it aligned to your organization. It doesn't necessarily have to be industry, but preferably. Then you need to set a really tangible and easy way to validate that measure and the impacts that have happened as well. So all of a sudden, you take all of the objections away from the CFO. You're demonstrating what the benefits are going to be, and that's what motivates them. If I think around a CMO, so Chief Marketing Officer, what's important to them? A lot of them, or public affairs, for example, it's around the brand reputation. So having a look at what are you going to put in or what are you proposing that is going to make a real step change or a real improvement in what the reputation is. So it reduces reputational risk for the organization. It helps that executive meet their target or meet what they're trying to achieve. And so you go on executive by executive, really doing your homework, and some of this is around that data analysis as well. So what is it that they're wanting to achieve, and how can you help them achieve that? And then demonstrating how you can help them achieve that. And then all of a sudden they come around to realizing that, hang on, customer experience can help me. It's not a standalone piece that's over there. It's not the fluffy stuff. It's not the nice to have. It's something that can add tangible benefits and can really help me deliver my objectives in my particular realm or function, whatever it might be. So yeah, there's some. That's how I tend to do it.
Yeah, it's about creating win-wins, isn't it?
The other thing for me is getting customer onto the C-suite. Or at least onto the ELT. Now, that's if it isn't there already. And so, we're seeing a strong emergence of brand new CCOs, and it's great. We're seeing that. But for some organizations, that's a bit of a step too far just yet. And so I think we need to drive a bit of a wedge in that pie. And to do that, I think we might need to push for a voice of a customer to be on every agenda item. And that's like a nice soft way. I mean, a lot of organizations now do safety moments or well-being moments, etc. Well, let's have a customer moment. Let's then start getting that wedge in the pie that customer deserves a voice at the C-suite. And equally, is there, even more so than the C-suite, is there a voice of customer on your board? Now, I'm actually on the board of one of our contracts. And so all of a sudden the conversation takes on a whole new direction. The voice of the customer is there. I speak broadly to my fiduciary duty as an officer and a director in that state. And all of a sudden there's more impetus put on, well, what does customer think here? And I'm seeing my board directors and my chairman come to me and look at me and say, well, what do you think, Yvette, for some of the key directives and the resolutions that are being made for the benefit of the organisation? So it is C-suite, but it's also the board. And how can we really just make little step changes and incremental changes to get customer more involved at that level? Because that then drives that DNA and that culture embedding all the way through the organisation. And we're not going to get change without that.
I heard you talk previously about some little tips and tricks. One was you talked about calculating the cost of customer complaints. It's almost like a baseline, and then using that to, I guess, forecast the potential impacts of a project where, sometimes it's hard to project those types of costs. But by doing that, help you, I guess, start conversations with the CFOs and I guess the executives to help them understand, it's actually going to bring some returns.
Yeah, exactly. So that's that complaint example is a great example, and I bring it out quite regularly when I'm trying to explain the benefits of CX to people, because it really is a tangible piece. I mean, working for John Holland, I often say I'm one customer experience professional with 5,000 engineers, and so proof is in the pudding a lot of times, and so being able to demonstrate a real and tangible benefit and metric is really been key for me, providing them with education around what CX is all about, but also being able to integrate CX into everything that we do. And so those customer complaints, for example, it's a good exercise for everyone to do in the organisation. And I think a few people get quite horrified when they realise the true cost of complaints. And by that, I don't mean just, it's a refund or it's a goodwill gesture, etc. It's more than that, because if you all of a sudden, if you model the actual cost of an individual complaint, and we're talking even first call resolution or first contact resolution here, there's still a cost. You have to, first of all, implement a system or a software or a process, or have a bot or a body there to take that feedback on board. They need to take time to investigate potentially while they're on the phone or while they're having the chat, etc. They then need to maybe even go further and engage with somebody else and understand what that might, what that issue might be, whether it be getting more information while the person's on hold, whatever that might be. That takes time. And then they have to come back and resolve it. And then generally, most organisations now do a closed loop. So there might be a follow-up call after that, or alternatively a follow-up email, which then has to be processed. And even if it's automated, generally there's a triage system. So there's a cost. And so, I remember a while ago when I was looking at, well, how much does it cost for someone to just call up, have a phone call for around about 5 to 10 minutes maximum, and that's first call resolution. They had to get some information, which generally tends to be around the average in this particular organisation, and it was well over $170 per call. And and you think it's 5 to 10 minutes of a customer feedback officer's time on the phone. They've got they're just using email and blah blah. But when you really break it down, it makes a difference. And so when all of a sudden you find something that will stop 100 or 1,000 of those calls per year, per month, it really adds up really quickly. And so when you're then looking at that business case to change, all of a sudden you've got real tangible benefits there to the P&L. And not only that, then if you've got less people coming in, then all of a sudden you might not need the bot. You might not need as many people there to answer customer feedback, or you might be able to reallocate those people from being customer feedback officers to being salespeople. And so all of a sudden what was considered a cost can now be reinvested into making profit. And so it can be really quite a powerful exercise to understand exactly what the nuts and bolts are, what the differences are, and how you can invest into the future.
Yeah.
And so that's one example, right? So, But I mean, essentially, you have to model the different areas, right? So there might be different areas of influence throughout your business, and you need to, when you write your business case, and it comes back to what I was mentioning before around how do you speak to people, how do you speak to your executive, and how do you understand what's important to them, is writing those business cases tailored. So just like we contextualize and personalize our experiences for our people, our customers, we need to personalize them for the executive. We need to personalize those business cases so that when we're pulling them together, they are specific, they are tangible, and they really solve the problem that we're trying to solve. And in the meantime, what are the unintended consequences or the unintended benefits that we have? And that's where all of this work comes in. And it's absolutely critical to a sustainable belief and, I guess, investment and prioritization of investment in particular in CX, because there's always seems to be a bit of a fight for the purse, because obviously budget is very limited. So how do we make sure that customer experience is at the front? We need to demonstrate that in tangible ways, and this is just one way to do that.
Yeah, great. I'd like to move on and talk a little bit about CX metrics, and just get an insight into your mindset and approach when tackling it. How do you go about it? What are some of the most important metrics to think about?
Well, I'm going to be a little bit controversial here. So, for me, the current most common or favoured CX metrics, they're all lag indicators. And for example, CSAT's too late; it's gone. Horse has bolted. It's bad luck. And so for me, what are the triggers? And this is where you need to find out what are the triggers or the drivers for CSAT. So what are those key moments of truth that input into what the customer satisfaction is? So if I look at an example for that for us, it's around cleanliness on trams. So if we self-audit on our trams and we notice that the quality is decreasing, we know that that's going to automatically lead to poor CSAT results. So it's a lead indicator for CSAT. If we know that if we have lots of cancellations because, for example, there's a real war on talent at the moment for all blue-collar shift workers in Australia. So bus drivers, tram drivers, train drivers, ferry masters, etc. And so if we don't have enough of those people to actually deliver our services and we have to cancel some, we know that that's a key driver of dissatisfaction for customers. And so all of a sudden then as well, we know that we're going to have not only massive amounts of complaints as well, which then is a cost, as I mentioned before, but we're also going to have a really big drop in our customer satisfaction results. And that then leads to, obviously, a drop in NPS. And so all of a sudden, it's all entwined, but really knowing what's up the front versus what's down the back is critical. So I try to keep up the top because I then know what's coming down the pipe. I know then that if we have poor reliability or on-time running now, that next month's customer satisfaction results, when they get reported, we're going to see a drop. And I'm prepared for that drop because I know it's coming. And so we can then all of a sudden start to model what the cause and the impact is. And so again, it becomes more tangible. It's not we've got more complaints. We might see this, we might see that. All of a sudden we can go, well, we know that if we drop our reliability by 3%, we know that that's a direct correlation at the end of the month to having an increase in customer complaints by 20%. Which, as we know before, that's times $170. And then even further than that, we know that 3% drop also leads to this many complaints, but it also then leads to a drop in CSAT for up to 4 bips as well.
Now, I'd like to talk about some of the innovative things you're working on with your team. You at the customer show, you talked about using AI in some really fascinating ways. So could you share some of those concepts you were talking about?
Sure. I'm pretty proud of this actually because it's something that's the first thing I want to share is near and dear to my heart. And it's around AI. And I know that seems to be the be all and end all at the moment. It's kind of like the new black. But AI using it in a way that is a little bit different to what has been in the past. So we actually are going to be using, or we are using our CCTV on our stations and on our across our network or on board trains and trams and buses in some instances as well, at stops at train stations. And what we're doing is we're actually monitoring behaviours of people. And we know, for example, that when people are going to, for example, graffiti or damage, they have a certain presence and certain body language about them. And what happens is that what's happening and what we can do with this AI, which is fantastic, is that the AI will pull in the feed from the CCTV and they'll automatically spot via the AI bot in the background that this movement is happening, this body language is happening. And so all of a sudden, when you've got all of these, you can imagine a public transport network has hundreds and hundreds of CCTV, if not thousands. It will highlight that particular camera feed to an operations control center, to a security person who's sitting there watching the CCTV, and they can all of a sudden they're focused on that particular piece, and they can make then a decision to intervene. So they can call the police, they can make an announcement if it's on board or at a stop or a station, or they can just watch and monitor and see, or they can close it off. And obviously then the machine learning will continue to evolve and get more streamlined as we have these interactions. And we think, graffiti, for example, on public transport alone, I think in Sydney is over $10 million a year it costs It's to rectify and to fix. So it's big money we're talking here. And that's one part of it. But the other part around the body language and the part that's more near and dear to me is around self-harm. So we know that unfortunately some people are at their wits' end and they make a decision to self-harm when they're on public transport. And so again, if they're on a stop or a station and they're exhibiting these types of behaviours that we have identified over the years, and we've worked with specialised groups and organisations that have helped us also identify unique attributes, this then gets highlighted to the Operations Control Centre. And we've known through research, again, with psychologists and psychiatrists globally, that more times than not, a simple interaction via a remote announcement to reach out to that person will change their mind. And so essentially it'll save their life. And so being able to have that ability to help someone save lives is truly unique, and it's something that we're really looking forward to being able to finalise testing, roll it out properly, and then and share it globally, because it's something that's really important. That's one key thing.
That's amazing. I love the practicality, but also the impact as well. And the idea you could be using AI to save someone's life versus some of the chat around what AI is doing in other circles. It's just so nice to see a great example, practical, but also an amazing impact.
Another one that we're looking at is in relation to, and again, this is it's a bit of AI, but it's a bit of sensors as well that we're utilising, which will measure capacity and movement and behaviours again, but for a different reason. And it picks up your signal from your mobile phone at stops and stations, for example, and at interchanges for people, and on board as well. So essentially what happens is that you have customers that turn up to a busy train station, for example, and you see them all congregate around one particular area of the station, and you intuitively know it, but and you might observe it on CCTV, but it's really difficult to quantify over time and to see if there's any gradual changes or concentration of that particular issue over time. Same with how busy it is on board, so trams and also trains, and seeing where people actually stop, because what people we see and what delays trains a lot of time is actually people congregating near the doors, particularly when it's busy time. So peak periods, morning and afternoon, for example, people going into the city or out of the city. And what people tend to do is they get on board and then they stay in the vestibule or just by the door, right? So, and they might be going 20 minutes, but they're staying there. And unfortunately what happens is that more people get on board, and what's happening is that because people to get off have to fight through the crowd, and to get on, if they really want a seat or to move in, they have to fight through the crowd. We're finding that that's delaying our services. And then we already know, as I mentioned before, that when you have delayed services or they're not reliable, all of a sudden customers aren't satisfied and they're less likely to use our services, which means they're more likely to be in the car, which means then they've got more cars on the road, which means that sometimes with our trains and buses, there's more traffic, so then it slows everything down. So there's lots of
connect the dots
effects.
kind of.
Yeah, 100%.
It's fascinating.
So what we're trying to do is we're trying to understand, and there is a product that's already in place that's being trialled in Sydney right now, and not by us, by another organisation. And what they're doing is they're trialling and seeing where are people congregating, and even how long are they staying, how long are they waiting for that particular tram or that particular train or that particular bus at that stop. What are they doing when they're at the stop? Are they engaging with the printed timetable that's there? Are they staying near one end? Are they congregating at near one end? Are they walking around? What are they doing? And then how long are they waiting? Then when they're on board, where are they getting on? Where are they getting off? Where are they staying on board? And so then it helps us identify, well, you know what, we might need to change our timetable because we need more services at this time because there seems to be an overcrowding at the bus stop or the tram stop or the train station. And so all of a sudden then that helps us inform what that looks like. And so we have more regular services. And again, customers are more likely to use us, more patronage, et cetera, and the organic flow on from there. So all of this stuff really is quite useful. It also helps us with identification around where we should deploy our frontline staff. So if we have more people there that we know like to get on board and just stay in that vestibule area and congregate around the doors, we can actually have people help them to move on board and just remind people to move into the carriage a bit more or to move down the bus a little bit more, etc., rather than having that congregation there and delaying services. So that's another piece that we're really excited, and I can't wait to see the results of that, because it just flows onto everything. And I guess the last piece that I really want to share is in relation to accessibility. And so, again, near and dear to my heart, because we know that whenever we design an inclusive or accessible customer experience, we're actually not only just improving the service for people with a disability, we're also improving the service by default for everyone. And so for us, it's really important that we do design with accessibility and inclusiveness first and foremost, and equity first and foremost, and then everything else will flow from improvements from there. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is solar-powered e-paper. And so when for us, and this is probably specific for transport, so probably not so cool for everyone else, but one of the things I'm hoping everyone can probably identify with the problem that we're solving here. And one of the problems that we've identified is that in the suburbs, people don't necessarily have beautiful passenger information display screens on their trams or on their buses in particular. And so if they're there, and if you're the elderly, or you have low phone battery, or you're in an area you're not familiar with, you don't have any access to when the next train or tram or bus is coming, or equally, if there's an incident on the network and that tram or bus that you're expecting is not showing up. And so you could be waiting there for a long time with no idea that anything's coming. And so one of the things that we really want to do is, how do we get more information to those people? Because it's not viable to have those big passenger information display screens at every single station and every single stop. So what we've done is we've found a beautiful provider who is in Australia, who provides a screen that is only about this big, and that goes onto the bus stop or onto the tram stop, and it provides information in real time. So customers who are, for example, in suburbia and they're waiting for that train, they might be the elderly, for example, and they're expecting their bus to show up to take them to their doctor's appointment. There's been a big accident up the road and that bus isn't coming. What happens currently is that they just don't know. But what this provides them with is it allows them to get a blinking message in real time to say that there's an issue and that your bus isn't coming. It also will provide you with a different way to get to where you need to go. It also provides you with the ability to press a button and speak to someone live, someone who can actually help you. And also at night, if you're in the suburbia and you're waiting, it's late at night, you might be a nurse about to go on shift, or coming off shift, for example, or a uni student finish their bar gig and they're heading home, or they're heading into the city for a big night out afterwards. It's dark. And so what often happens is that if it's dark and a bus driver comes by, they don't necessarily see you. And so this e-paper also illuminates at night. Okay, yeah. And so all of a sudden the drivers can see you, they'll stop. It also makes the customers feel safer, because then they're not waiting in pure darkness. They've actually got a light there. So there's that sense of safety. And then above all of that information and all of that positivity is also the fact that it's solar powered. So there's a battery, fully self-contained unit, fully green, it's totally sustainable, in line with what we're trying to achieve, which is, a better future for everyone. And so, for us, it's just a great piece of tech, if you like, but it's intuitive tech, it's future-driven tech, and it does have the ability to be fully accessible for people who are either low vision or blind, or hard of hearing or deaf as well, or equally just don't have access to a mobile phone.
Well, unfortunately, it's time to wrap up. It's been so great to chat, Yvette. You've given us a ton of great insights, been some fascinating ideas and concepts you've talked about, but so many great insights around CX. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Justin. As you can probably tell, I'm a little bit passionate, and I could talk about this all day, and more than happy to with anyone, believe me. But it's been great to share my insights, passion, and a little bit of knowledge and experience with you today.
Thanks for tuning in. Some amazing insights from a great CX leader. If you found this insightful, make sure you hit the subscribe or follow button now, as we have some great episodes coming up. And if you have any questions or would like to chat, reach out to us at customersmarts.co. Catch you next time.